Do you believe in ghosts? Welcome back to Paranormal Experience. I'm Melissa.
I'm Kelly.
I'm Mandy.
We're here today to talk about Mandy's choice of haunted location, somewhere where she would like to investigate, the Athens Lunatic Asylum in Ohio. We're going to start out with talking about some of the history, and then Mandy will tell you about some of the present day happenings at the old asylum. The Athens Lunatic Asylum was one of many designed under what was called the Kirkbride Plan. Thomas Kirkbride advocated for moral treatment of patients, and his idea was to have like a self-sustaining asylum. So you know how Eloise, they have like all the buildings. This was comparable. It had 78 buildings. You know, it's like the dairy farming and the tobacco and you know what I mean? How they kind of sustained themselves as a hospital. Right. They had the post office, things like that.
Gardens and stuff like that.
He had these self-sustaining asylums, and the patients worked at the asylum, right? And that was part of the treatment. It was supposed to, be feeling good about yourself because you accomplished something. But that only lasted until 1970s. A court ruled that you could not have patients just working in your facility. You had to pay them minimum wage. So that kind of put an end to that. And, I was thinking about it, and it seems good. Like, don't you think, like, the premise of it seems good? Like somebody sitting around in a cell all day isn't going to get better, right?
Yeah, I would rather have something to do.
But at the same time, they could be easily abused.
That's true.
It seems like he had, like, a good thought in mind. A good little...
Yeah, and it also gives them the skills if they ever get out of the asylum, right?
Yeah, I feel like most people overall didn't. But I don't know, we did hear about some people that did go home, like after 2 or 3 years. But I feel like overall most people didn't. But I think that was mostly because their family didn't want to deal with them after they had been in an asylum.
Yeah, they were embarrassed.
Yeah. The Athens, Ohio hospital opened in 1874. The architect was Levi Schofield. The first 10 years they spent trying to make a healing community. They had designed and implemented water purification systems, which doesn't that seem like in the 1800s? I mean, I guess they had to purify their water or else they would all be getting sick, although I am under the impression people were always getting sick. We've all played like Oregon Trail, right? But I wonder what their water purification systems were like. I've just never read that before. I don't know. I mean, I feel like they did amazing things like in the 1800s that I wouldn't expect them to do.
Yeah, I would only think I need to boil the water. I wouldn't, you know what I mean? Like a whole
right, like this sounds like
system. Yeah,
like a whole community system. They built ponds, which I kind of thought was strange. Like, I don't know if they're having the patients dig them. I don't know. They farmed in the fields, and they had vegetable gardens, livestock, a greenhouse. And there was one thing that threw me off again, boating. I just wondered, I don't know if that is some sort of like fishing, but I think it was in the ponds, right? I don't know what their boating was, but maybe it was recreation. Because this is actually listed under jobs. I mean, that seems like recreational to me, maybe, but right. I think it was actually like a job of some sort. I just don't know what it was.
Were they making boats?
I don't know. This asylum, because of the Kirkbride method, had ballrooms, which I believe they lost one in the fire, and an amusement parlor. So I guess most asylums prior to this, they had, poorhouses and jails. We've all heard that. Like, I know Eloise originally was a poorhouse. That was part of the Kirkbride method, was recreational things. Like we were saying, the boating might be, but there was ballrooms and amusement parlors.
I like the name of that, amusement parlor.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder what they did. They probably played cards, right?
Maybe.
Music or...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was that before? That was probably before a video or movie.
Right.
The black and white ones,
Yeah. The asylum was built on land that had belonged to Arthur Coates, and I'm going to butcher this, Eliakim H. Moore Farms. It was originally 141 acres, but would eventually grow to over 1,000 acres and 78 buildings.
Wow.
I think that was actually the exact amount of buildings that Eloise had.
78?
So I wonder if, like, they were all, like, the same buildings. I wonder if it almost
Right.
looked comparable in that kind
Yeah,
of...
maybe.
They renamed this hospital constantly. And all the names are a little bit, they're kind of alike, and I wonder why. But so through the years, this hospital would be named the Athens Lunatic Asylum, the Athens Hospital for the Insane. That's a good one, right? So rude. The Athens Asylum for the Insane, the Athens State Hospital, the Southeastern Ohio Mental Health Center, the Athens Mental Health Center, the Athens Mental Health and Mental Retardation Center, the Athens Mental Health and Developmental Center, and then they finally just settled on the Athens Medical Center.
Which is
Normal.
more politically correct than those other words.
Yeah, back then, though, I don't think they really cared as much.
They
but
didn't care.
Yeah.
They didn't care.
There was a few notable patients. The first notable patient that I'm going to talk about is Billy Milligan. Are you guys familiar? You have to be a little bit familiar with Billy Milligan.
Is that the guy that was the rapist?
Yes. Are you familiar now?
I'm not.
Billy Milligan, also known as the campus rapist, was arrested for 3 rapes in the 1970s at the university. The thing that's notable about Billy Milligan is that he was diagnosed with dissociative identity disorder. So he was actually the first person to get off on that type of insanity plea. And he spent 10 years in a hospital instead of jail.
Oh, okay.
Billy Milligan is the person that the Split movie is loosely based on.
Oh.
Okay.
The other notable patient is Margaret Schilling, and I think that she's the one that the hospital is most known for her.
Yeah.
It was December 1975, and Margaret went missing. Now, I don't think anybody really knows what was happening when Margaret went missing. I did hear some speculation that they were playing hide and seek.
That's what I heard.
They did, eventually realize that she was missing. They did search for her. They didn't find her. I do wonder how hard they searched for her, because she was found January 11th, 1979. So this is just a little bit over a month later. She was found lying naked in an abandoned wing of the hospital on the concrete floor. She had taken her clothes off and folded them neatly and set them next to her. But no foul play suspected. She died of cardiac arrest. But she had been there so long that she left a decomposition mark in the concrete. So I actually sent a picture of this to the group chat. When I heard that there was a decomposition stain on the concrete, I don't know, I thought it would be like a dark mark or, just like a black blob or something like that. I wasn't expecting, it's like a white figure.
Yeah, I saw that. And I was just wondering too, like if the age of the concrete and how the concrete was made, plus the juices, how they interact with the chemicals in the cement.
So there actually was an article, and I'm going to put it in the show notes. I still have it. An article about the cement in this particular instance that I used, when I was researching. So I didn't read the whole article, about the more technical stuff, but it might actually answer some of those questions.
I also read that people speculate that the white is from people trying to clean it off. But I feel like if you were trying to clean it, I don't know, would the cleaner look just like the shape of a body?
Right, because it has a very large hip and butt area. It almost looks like you can see breasts where they must have sunk down during I don't know. Do you guys think that?
I mean, I see shapes of something.
So, yeah, you would scrub in a circle. You wouldn't scrub in an exact body motion.
Right.
Yeah. So that doesn't make sense to me that that's bleached out from cleaner.
It's not at all what I was expecting. I guess I've not seen a lot of decomp stains, but
When I was on the tour there, they wouldn't let us go inside. We got to walk around outside, but they did point to the window of where that room is, where the stain is. So I got to see the window. That's all I got to see. Better than nothing.
It would be creepy to like be in there and just walk up and not know and just see the figure of a woman on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
So by the 1900s, a couple decades after they opened, we're shifting away from the moral Kirkbride treatment method. And at that time, they started exploring, first of all, more medications, because at this time they had come out with like lithium and, a few others like that. It was because they were overcrowded, just like every asylum at that time, overcrowded with menopausal women and people that have just given birth, In the 1950s, there were about 1,800 patients, which was triple of what they had originally envisioned for the hospital and specifically the Kirkbride method. At this time, the hospital had become the largest employer in the town. But along with like the new therapies, the medication therapies, the 1950s is really when everything was big with the electric shock therapy, the hydrotherapy. They did lobotomies and art therapy, which sounds like the only pleasant part of any of that. There's on npr.org, you can find Walter Freeman's lobotomies, oral histories, and we'll have one linked in our show notes, and like an audio file that you can listen to. And it's people that knew Dr. Walter Freeman either talking about watching him perform lobotomies or people that actually received lobotomies that survived it.
Is he the guy that... Because when we were on the tour, they said that they would literally line patients up in the hallways. There'd be...
Yes.
I'm going to say hundreds. I don't know if it was really hundreds, but it was a lot of beds, and he would just do a lobotomy, just go down the hallway and just do them all up and down the hallway.
Well, I read that how they would do it was they would send in one patient and then another patient. And I'm sure they potentially did it both ways, right? I mean, there couldn't have been one way that it was done. Mm-hmm. But that he never even would like leave the room, which means nobody's cleaning anything.
Oh, no.
It's just going into eye after eye after eye.
Ew.
Lobotomy.
You're lucky if you just got pink eye.
Right?
Lobotomy. What's a little shared brain juice?
They do believe that Dr. Freeman completed 15 or 20 lobotomies a day. Dr. Wolfhard Baumgartel, a physician, worked at Athens Hospital with Dr. Freeman in the 1950s, and he said that he felt when the lobotomies were done, people were less emotional. For some, it worked out. They just were able to go on less emotional, mm-hmm. and for some, they became vegetables.
Well, here's a fun fact for anybody who watches American Horror Story. Mm-hmm. They had a season with a doctor doing lobotomies, and it's based off of Dr. Freeman.
Oh, is it?
Oh, yep. Wow, that's cool.
Which season was that? I know I feel like
2,
I saw that.
Asylum, right?
Yeah, Asylum.
Season 2.
Oh, right.
Remember the reporter? She got locked up in there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I do remember.
I didn't know it was
I feel like
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's neat. So in the same article, Patricia Moen talks about her lobotomy in 1962. And her and her husband are so happy about the results of her lobotomy. I just don't read a lot of lobotomy success stories. No. So I was a little set aback, but I guess she was so depressed she said she didn't care. They warned her that she could die or become a vegetable, and she had already tried to commit suicide, and she said she just didn't care. So they warned her that those things might happen, which I was a little bit shocked about. I guess I just thought everybody went in there thinking it was some sort of miracle thing that was going to cure them, and, you know, they were just given a lobotomy, and I think of them as more victims. So I thought that was interesting. I guess maybe not that anybody would ever get it, but to be told that and have 15 to 20 people going a day, like if they were telling everybody that, that's a sad reality.
It is. I feel like not everybody was told that, though. I mean, from what...
Right.
I mean,
from what I always thought, I didn't think they were either.
Misled into thinking. Or maybe they didn't even have a choice.
Or maybe they didn't understand. I mean, they were in such a place
Yeah.
that they didn't...
But she was definitely told, and she said she went home and just started living. So her husband said, or she asked him, "What have you noticed?" And she said, "Anything with my housekeeping skills?" And he said, "You cry less." So she must have just been really emotional, and then maybe for some people, if it takes down that emotional halfway,
right. If you're highly emotional and it takes away your emotions.
And if you're just normal and you're just menopausal and they lobotomize you. So one thing that I was not happy to hear was the Kirkbride method. Because at first he kind of sounded a little bit heroic to me, right? Because I just feel like not a lot of people were battling for other people at that time. But it also required that you cut off all contact with your family, which then I thought about it and I was like, well, a lot of families were embarrassed. They just left people. They didn't do, so maybe it was kind of to spare people that.
Right.
Or, I mean, who knows, but that just seems so mean. The 1950s came and everybody started deinstitutionalizing, and, they are more allowed to use patients for free labor anymore. And by 1985, there were only 200 patients left. In 1993, the last patients were transferred to the Appalachian Behavioral Healthcare Facility.
So after the asylum closed, in 1993, they converted part of the property into the college, the Ohio University. And some people say that it may have the largest number of haunted buildings per acre. Nearly every building on campus has at least one ghost associated with it. And the campus...
That's a lot of ghost stories in one place.
It is. The campus is said to be haunted by some of the former patients. The property, it's now called The Ridges, and it was donated to the university in 1993. They use it for multiple purposes, including housing the Ohio University Police, a museum, art students have a space there. It's known to be one of the most haunted campuses in America.
So I think that the old ballroom is now the art center.
Oh, is it?
In November of 1868, there was a fire in the upper north part of the northwest wing. 6 patients died. It was described as a grand and awful scene.
And that was at the hospital? Right, because it was before the school.
It was at the asylum, but it was the ballroom. The ballroom was burned.
And now that's
where the art center is, yeah.
So what I've done is I've kind of just, each building or hall that I got information on, I just kind of went with that. The Sigma Phi Epsilon House, it's home to a ghost named, I'm not sure if I'm going to say this right, Nicodemus. The house is one of the oldest homes in Athens, and it served as a stop on the Underground Railroad. Confederate soldiers received word that the house hid escaped slaves, and then they decided to raid it. They only found one slave, which was Nicodemus, and he was found in the basement. He was trying to get away, and they shot him in the back. They dragged his body from the house, Other people say that locals stoned him. So either way, like, he died.
Oh, that's
Just
horrific.
for
Yeah.
Horribly, yeah.
Yeah. There's really no documentation to support this, but the former Ohio University professor John Kachuba believes that the events are plausible for that time and area. The building now has been home to several fraternities and sororities, and the students that have experiences blame Nicodemus. Some have seen the apparition of a man in tattered clothing. And in the early 1970s, some sorority sisters heard whining and scratching noises from a closet that had a sealed-off passage. So there was a passage underneath for the railroad, so they would hear the scratching in the hidden passageways. And some people would claim that the doors would fly open, and some said they could even feel something touch them. So they think it was Nicodemus.
Wouldn't you freak out? Like, would you ever go in there again? If you were in underground passageways and things were scratching, I would think that there was rats. I mean, I know you have to. I know they had to go in there, right? But, I mean, wouldn't you freak out? I would be screaming.
Oh, you mean like if you were a slave and had to go in there? Yeah, but they're... think about what they...
I don't know. I guess I'm thinking like rats, because I don't know, scratching like underground. Like, I don't know. I would always think rats before I thought ghosts.
But if you were a slave, what's your option?
And I know they have to go in there, but I'm just saying it would be really, really freaky. I don't care when it is. If it was the slaves or if it was the other people, I don't care. If you're in a tunnel and there's scratching noises, you're peeing your pants.
Okay.
I think you would. Anybody would.
One student had a run-in with Nicodemus. In the early morning hours while he was sleeping in his lofted bed, he felt someone trying to pull the sheets off of him. There was no one else in the room. His sorority brothers also experienced Nicodemus's antics. They say that lights flicker and the Xbox will turn on by itself. The items on shelves are being moved and doors slam on their own. But anybody that's been there says they don't feel any danger. They just kind of feel like he's there. Some people
trying to play video games.
Well, some people even think because he was a young man and there's all these, young kids there that it's just maybe curious or, he's harmless.
I would be so mad if I was a ghost and I was stuck and there was a rec room and you couldn't, really do anything. Wouldn't that be awful?
Yeah.
It would.
Another haunting is the Pi Beta Phi house. It's rumored to be inhabited by a little girl who drowned in the pool that was once in the backyard. Katie Carroll was a sophomore student studying there, and one night she was laying in bed and she heard a little girl singing the ABCs. She got out of bed, walked to the corner where she was hearing the song coming from, and she saw a shadow in the corner. Her roommate said that they have felt something crawl into bed with them at night and get under the covers, but when they look, there's nothing there. I would freak out if something got in bed.
That would creep me out worse than rats.
Me too! Me too! The Tau Delta house. Fraternity brothers stole a tombstone from a rumored haunted cemetery, which right there, that's just, you're asking for it. They immediately began to experience poltergeist activity. Doors would slam, items would fly through the air, and a window even shattered completely. But once they returned the headstone, the activity stopped in that house. Then there is Washington Hall. This hall is supposed to be haunted by an entire basketball team. Some people say it was a girls' high school team. They stayed there when they were doing a basketball camp, but they were in a bus accident, and people say their spirits returned to the place that they had so much fun at for their camp. Some people say that you can hear the bouncing of basketballs and girls laughing. I've never heard of a whole team haunting a place. I thought that was kind of cool.
That is interesting.
Another student, a freshman named Hannah, attended the college, and during her stay in Washington Hall, she experienced waking up with her bedding being pulled off and put on the floor. Items in her dorm were moved around and found in strange spots. She would wake with scratches on her body, and other students who lived in the dorm near her would experience knocking on their windows in the middle of the night and have their hair pulled, and music would turn off and on by itself. And there's Bush Hall. Students hear marble sounds and experience poltergeist activity by turning on water faucets and messing with lights. Now, the marble sounds, I think, is kind of funny because, I guess probably people used to play marbles back in the day. So, can you imagine, hearing them rolling around above you? Because you never hear that now, right? In modern day, you would never hear anybody playing marbles like that.
Right.
A former student who lived there during the 2000-2001 school year was studying with her roommate when she heard marbles outside of her door. She thought it was other students.
There's a very distinctive sound
right?
if they're rolling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like if they roll kind of far.
Yes. So she heard them outside of the door, and she thought it was just other students in the door messing with her. She talked to some of the other students to say, did you do it? And they were like, no, but that's just the Bush Hall ghost. She does that outside your door if she likes you. They've also heard scratching in the wall, and the scratching would actually move around the room towards the bed. So it would start by the door and just go scratch all around the perimeter of the room. Then there's Bryan Hall. Students residing on the 4th floor claim to hear someone upstairs in the bell tower, even though it's now used solely for storage and is locked. And students living on the other floors hear scratching on doors and walls and see strange lights. So I feel like we've got lots of scratching and lights going off at the school. Shively Hall, a student in the 70s, was rumored to have participated in cult ceremonies at a nearby cemetery. When she stopped with the cult stuff, she would experience eerie activity in her dorm room, and she felt like she was getting pulled back to the cemetery. So I'm not sure how she knew she was going back to the cemetery, but that's what she thought. There's the Brown House, named after Millie Brown. She's the woman who donated the house, and she was a lifelong resident there.
Isn't that the name of the girl from Stranger Things?
Millie Bobby Brown.
Right.
Yeah, that's 11. Legend has it that she can still be seen sitting by the window, and ghostly children can be heard splashing in a swimming pool that's long gone. And it now houses the Contemporary History Institute. Jefferson Hall also has marble sounds, mostly heard on the top floor. It'll sound like someone is dropping hundreds of marbles on the floor.
That's a big sound.
To be heard.
Like that description, it's hailing.
Yeah. No, it would sound like hail, like the big baseballs. Some students were exploring the upper halls of the building, and they saw a teacher behind a desk dressed in 1950s clothing. They did try speaking to her, but then noticed that she was floating above the ground. So they left to get their RA, and when they came back, the desk was covered with dust, and the ghost was gone. So that was kind of a cool one, I thought. One girl in a bathroom stall had rolls of toilet paper from neighboring stalls unroll all over the floor with nobody else being in the bathroom. And then there's Perkins Hall. Residents hear a woman laughing and speaking and have witnessed electrical appliances turn off and on. Lynn Hall, and this hall is actually part of the old mental hospital. It's now the Kennedy Museum of Art, and its well-known spirit is Margaret Schilling. Margaret is the stain on the floor. Some people report that Margaret still roams the floors of the old ward at night. Then there's the Convocation Center. This is where the basketball team plays. From what I understand it, there's dorms built on the outside frame, and the middle part is the basketball court, so the outer edges are the dorms. The RA was killed there by her former boyfriend, and people say she still walks the halls making sure that the doors are locked. Which I didn't really get into how she was killed by her boyfriend, but I almost feel like if she's going around making sure the doors are locked, maybe he got in her room. So she's trying to protect other people. That's kind of how I took it. In that same center, a former student died in her sleep, and her ghost supposedly embraced a later resident who slept in the same bed. Another room has a haunted closet, and those doors open and close, and books and clothes fly off shelves and hangers. Seems like there's a lot of poltergeist activity in this, too. There's Crawford Hall.
Is this all in the buildings that were the old asylum buildings, or is it the whole entire campus?
The whole campus. There's Crawford Hall. It's haunted by a previous RA named Laura. She fell to her death in 1993 from a fourth-floor window during Easter break, and her apparition has been seen on the location where she landed. In 1995, an RA in the first-floor room was awakened by a silhouette of a girl who had opened his door. She said, "I'm sorry, I've woken you." The RA went into the hall, but there was nobody there. He later learned that the room's window faced the spot where Laura hit the sidewalk. Cutler Hall. This also has a bell tower said to be haunted by a ghost who sets the wrong time on the clock, even though it has been recently set. So it's just playing tricks. College Green. There's West Green, which people say that it's built on an Indian burial ground, which, what isn't?
Exactly.
A river who once ran through the area can still be heard along with chants of Native Americans. So I'm not really sure what happened to the river and why it's not there now, because it says it once ran through it, so I'm not really sure what happened to that. And then there's Main Green, and this is weird. It is home to the ghost of supposedly one of the last remaining buffalo in Ohio. And they named him Stroud, and he is a headless buffalo who was killed by Confederate soldiers in the Civil War. Now, why doesn't he have a head, you ask?
Yes.
Supposedly, there were treasures, jewels and stuff that got hidden in the head, and that's why they took it. How it got in there, I don't know. The story doesn't really make sense. But supposedly there's a bar in the area that has a buffalo head, and they say that is Stroud's head. But nobody ever found treasure in that buffalo, so who knows about that one. And then there's Wilson Hall. This is the most famous haunted location on the campus. It is said to be located right in the middle of a large pentagram consisting of 5 cemeteries in the area. Sims, Hanning, Cuckler, Higgins, and Zion cemeteries. Supposedly, if you connect the 5 cemeteries on a map, they form a pentagram. However, the myth is not substantiated. There are 270 graveyards in Athens County, which means you could connect the dots and draw a pentagram just about anywhere in Athens if you picked 5 points. Room 428 of Wilson Hall is home to the spirit of a female student who died in the 1970s violently in the room after dabbling in the occult. Some stories say she visited the old asylum and something scared her so bad that she returned to Wilson Hall and committed suicide. Others say she practiced astral projection, harnessing the room's energy to allow her soul to leave its body, and students report seeing her misty apparition roaming the halls. Now, after she died, the college...
It's quite a story, too. This place has a lot of...
It does. So after she died, the college still did use room 428 for a little while, but it was declared uninhabitable after several complaints of unexplained activity and noises. So today that room is closed. They do not use room 428. Some sources I read say that they just use it for storage, but others say that the door was sealed off with cinder blocks and painted to look like the wall in the hallway. This is kind of interesting to me, though, because students pay a lot of money to rent a dorm room, and the fact that there's a room and they're not using it,
right?
I feel like that's weird to me. I guess they even renumbered the dorm rooms in that hall, so you can't really tell where room 428 is, depending on if it's... We don't know, right? It could be sealed off. It could just be it's storage, and then some people say they renumbered it, so I'm not really sure.
They probably just give a variety of different answers so that nobody knows, because that's what people do in that elevator game. They go looking for stuff like that.
Right. Some spiritualists believe that the geographical layout of the land with its peaks and valleys would make the spot conductive to psychic energy. In the early 80s, a newspaper researched the property and discovered that Wilson Hall is built on the same location as the original site of a cemetery of the asylum. I did find just a few, and I literally spent 10 minutes doing this. In 2013, I'm not going to say his last name because I just don't want to go with people's names, but a student named Michael died unexpectedly, possible suicide. In 2018, a student named Aaron accidentally died due to fentanyl overdose. September 2018, a student named Colin died during hazing. September 2019.
I can't even imagine being a parent and sending my kid off to college and this being the result. You know what I mean? Oh.
No, Tyler was even telling me about rumors of hazing and stuff at his school.
Yeah.
It's
pretty much everywhere.
It is. In September 2019, Jordan died in Wilson Hall, which is the same hall that is room 428, of a suicide. December 2020, Laken and Richard were killed in a car crash in Athens, but they were both students of the school. In September 2024, so just this year, a 19-year-old male student died off campus during a fall in a parking lot garage in Athens.
Oh.
And on just December 7th this year, it was the day after I was researching all this, there was a suicide at the school, and there was no info as of then. I feel like that sounds like a lot of deaths. I don't know. There's so many people that go to the schools, and people die all the time, you know, like when you're just looking. But it's...
Right, I guess, I mean, we've never researched deaths of college students before, but it does seem like a lot.
There's probably is a lot of suicide and drug stuff with college students, so who knows, but I thought that was weird that there were so many sudden deaths, so.
Yeah, and you touched on it a little bit, the cemeteries that used to be part of the asylum, because when I was looking at stuff, I found that they had 3 cemeteries on site when it was an asylum, where they would bury people, and there's like 1,930 people were buried, but their headstones only had numbers, so it's a lot like Eloise, because there's a cemetery there too. But if you figure all those people, buried nameless, that just, it's a whole other layer to everything.
Oh, absolutely.
So they did start putting names on, I think it was the 1940s.
1943.
There's 1,930 people buried. 1,600 only have a number. Over 1,600.
Yeah.
So there are a couple thousand do have names, but most of them haven't.
When I went on the tour there, we did get to look at the cemeteries, and they pointed out, and I don't remember if there were names on the graves or they were just numbers, but there was a Confederate soldier and a Union soldier buried next to each other. And that was like, they're like, oh, we probably shouldn't have done that. So I thought that was interesting. It's pretty, though. The property, like I said, I've only been on the outside, but it's hills, and it's really pretty.
I mean, the building itself, I saw a picture of it. It looked really, really beautiful. Oh, and those pictures I sent of the staff on their first day, they have pictures if you Google it. They're black and white photos, but everyone is dressed. I mean, exactly, I guess, how you would imagine people to be dressed in the 1800s. It just looks so uncomfortable. They're all wearing dresses. They're all wearing, like, suits. And
it looks uncomfortable. Like,
it just doesn't
I don't know
look
how
like what you'd
you
want to wear to work.
Take care of patients. Like, and it's probably long hours.
Yeah, so they have the first and second shift photos on the internet.
And one last, personal note, I was told when I went on the tour there, my dad had told me that I had an uncle by marriage that was in the Athens Asylum. His wife died of cancer probably in the late 1960s, maybe. And she was only 35 when she died, and he took it very, very hard, and he was put in the asylum for a little while. From what I understand, he didn't have a horrible experience, and he did get out and lived a fairly normal life. He always did seem a little bit odd. Some people are just kind of quirky or odd, but no horror stories about that, so it's kind of neat to know somebody there, I guess.
Oh, and speaking of the cemeteries, one of the cemeteries has graves in the shape of a circle, and it is rumored that witches meet there.
Ooh.
Yeah, social club for the college.
Exactly. Okay, well, that's our story on the Athens Lunatic Asylum. Hope you liked it.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.